Hey, this is Michelle, and you're listening to Words with Michelle, the podcast, a show where I sit down and have conversations with influencers on a range of topics, anything from natural hair, employment, discrimination, food, relationships, and everything in between. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you want to send me an email, hit me up at michelle@wordsmichelle.com. Thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. For today's episode, I'll be speaking about fibroids. More specifically, my guest and I will have a real and candid conversation about our experiences before and after having fibroid surgery. Today's guest is Namugenyi and I. Before we start the show, I want to let you know that this episode was sponsored by Epigram Consulting Services. If you're an entrepreneur or a micro-entrepreneur in need of leveling up your business, Epigram Consulting can walk you through while teaching you the process of starting or expanding a business with their unique business consulting model. Epigram specializes in project management, including product identification, business planning, financial analysis, operations, and marketing. So, are you ready to start or fine-tune your business? Contact Karen at info@epigramconsulting.com. Now back to the show. I want to start off by giving you some information about Namugenyi. She's an editor, writer, talking head, and optimistic nomad. That's what her Twitter handle says. Yeah, we still call it Twitter. I, like many of you, remember her as the VJ for Much Music for Rhapsody from 1999 to 2003, and she later went on to host basketball and football programming on Rogers Sportsnet. She's currently the co-host of The Agenda with Steve Peikin. She's host of TVO's latest project, The Thread with Namugenyi and I, and the host of The Agenda in the summer. If that weren't it, she hosts TVO's On Docs podcast and contributes columns to TVO.org. I mentioned Twitter in the beginning, and it has something to do with the show's topic. Last year, I followed a thread of Nam's about the pain that she was experiencing. When I read the thread, I felt that I was reading my own story. She spoke about the unbelievable amount of pain and terrifying feeling regarding her menstrual cycle. I didn't feel that much pain that Nam endured, but I just felt the discomfort and the anxiety around my cycle. My period was out of control. I tracked Nam's story. Part of me was terrified reading it because it hit too close to home. I could identify with the issues with her period. I later found out that Nam had fibroids. So on the advice of one of my friends, Claire, who I mentioned in this story, she suggested that I speak to Nam about her fibroid story. Funnily enough, Claire shared with me her fibroid story, which is equally as petrifying as Nam's. So this episode is a little different. There's no intro from my guest. We go straight into the conversation. And as soon as Libby logged on to Zoom, we started chatting. I originally had questions that I wrote that I wanted to ask, but we covered the material throughout our chat, and I loved the way our chat went. It was very informal. We just spoke about our experiences, compared situations, and provided a forum to speak about our fibroids. I'm happy to speak about this topic. I feel like everyone I know has a fibroid story. So tell your aunties, your mom, your daughters, your sisters, your nieces to listen, because we get deep. We talk about it all. Our periods, pain, hospitals, healthcare in Toronto, women's health. We discuss it all. We are unfiltered. So let's start the show and welcome Namugenyi. As I said, there's no intro. I start off the show just letting Nam know what happened to me in July of 2023. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so, and I thank them every single time I talk to them, every single time. Okay, so they came up from a barbecue, and first of all, my sister came up, she saw me, she's like, Michelle, you look like a ghost. I'm like, okay, hi, how are you? And then, you know what I mean? Like, thank you. And I was on my period at that time. So I was on my period. So of course you're drained, and I'm nauseous, and I'm weak, and I'm hot, and I'm just, everything is wrong. So then when my cousins came, I went upstairs, I took a shower and lay down for about a cool hour because I couldn't do anything. I was, trying to get everything ready for the barbecue. So then they come and they're just like pointing at me. like I see them in the corner pointing at me, and I'm like, okay. And then so then it wasn't until the next morning that my cousin calls. He's like, Michelle, you look horrible. He said, no disrespect. I said, I'm not taking, I'm not offended by that in any way. He's like, get some blood work done. We're
Mhm.
concerned. His wife is a nurse. So
Mhm.
she's like, she even examined me in the house too. She just put her hand on my neck and whatever. She did all this stuff. So then finally she's like, they're like, get some blood work done and whatever. Because he thought I had diabetes. So when I went to the walk-in, because I don't have a doctor, so I went to the walk-in and I said, I'm here to do some blood work. And I said, well, that's not the only issue. I have this issue with my stomach. My stomach's really, really big. So I get on the table and he's like, are you pregnant? I'm like, no. He asked me 5 times. That's how big my stomach was, okay? So he
Mhm.
asked me about five. I'm like, no. He's like, when the last time we have sex? And I told
Mhm.
him. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm not pregnant. So he leaves the room, comes back with another doctor, and he's like, are you pregnant? I'm like, no. He's like, are you pregnant? I'm like, I said no. So then he's like, and so they touched my stomach. My stomach was really hard, by the way. I don't know what yours was like. Mine was
It
like
was hard. Yeah.
rock hard. So they're like, we can't help you here. Go directly to the ER. So I went to the ER. I was there for 6 hours. They did every test, CT scan, um, tons of blood work. That's when I found out all this info. Like I have a gigantic fibroid and a mass.
Mhm.
So then, and then they're like, you're severely anemic as well. You may need to take infusions, whatever, whatever. So that was that. And then I had to do an MRI, ultrasound, all this stuff. But I will say that that was the scariest day of my life. Like seriously, besides the day before the operation. But that happened in July. So that was July 19th. I was lucky. And I say this because I hear your story, I hear Claire's story, and I hear my sister's story and every Black woman I know.
Mhm.
Um, so that was July 19th, and I had my operation on November 15th. So it didn't take that long.
Wow. It must, because now the gynecological wait list, it's so long. When um I was told I would have to wait for 2 years for surgery.
Wow.
And um I ended up, so after COVID, I got COVID for the first time in August of 2023. And then after that, my period just became so bad. In January of 2024, no, wait, 20, sorry, tw August 2022. Sorry.
Yeah.
I got COVID for the first time, August 2022. And after I had it, my period was really bad. So January of 2023, I ended up in the hospital. Like I was in and out of the ER, and January and February I bled straight for 52 days.
Wow.
And so it turned out that I had fibroids, but the last imaging that I had for these fibroids was February 2023. And by the time I had surgery, so in December 2023, and that's only because I made such a stink and I spoke up about it publicly because my gynecologist was insisting that I wait until January of 2025. Uh,
Wow.
yes. And
What was the
I,
reason? What
so
was
they kept saying, so they have to go through, like if you Google Ontario fibroids and Ontario Public Health or whatever, they have a procedure they go through where they combat it by drugs first. So I was given all types of medication that pushed my body into menopause to try to stop the bleeding. And some of this medication is just so bad for you. Some of this medication, there are lawsuits,
oh, gosh.
people talking about it online saying, I took this for 3 months. It ruined my life and made my work, like all these things. So I was given So when I was bleeding for those 2 months, they kept giving me stuff to try to stop it, but nothing made it stop. And I just kept going in and out of the ER. And eventually in August of 2023, I think that's when I spoke about it publicly for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
In a way, like, because I had blood pressure issues. I was getting infusions every, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. And the first time I had an infusion, they gave me this was at Women's College Hospital. They gave me, when you go in and they give you the needle and they I don't know what that's called. The apparatus where the infusion goes through.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they were like, "Well, here's the prescription. You need to go to the pharmacist to pick it up." I'm like, "What? I have
Uh,
to pay for this?"
uh,
And I went, and it was something like $400, $500. And
oh,
I was so first I was upset that I was at the hospital trying to get help, and then I'm being told that in order to get help, I need to go to the pharmacist to pay for this medication. And thankfully, I have health insurance, private health insurance, so it was covered. Then I spoke to somebody and said, "Well, if you can't cover it, the $400, $500 prescription, what are you supposed to do?" And then this is what they said, that if you can't afford the iron, that you get blood transfusions or something like that. And I'm just like, this is Ontario. How can this be? So I was tweeting about it, and then someone was tagging the Ministry of Health, and then someone in the Ministry of Health account on Twitter, never X, on Twitter,
yeah,
it said
exactly.
something. Yeah, it said something about, oh, we don't charge you for it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm at I have the receipts. I literally have the receipt. And all these other people saying I paid for it. Some people saying I didn't pay for it. So I mean, in short, because we could talk about this for like a week and we wouldn't even scratch the surface. Public health care in Ontario is in crisis, and gynecological care just seems to not even be something that anybody's talking about. And when it comes to fibroids, an issue like fibroids, that impacts 80% of all women by the age of 50, and mostly it impacts Black women, Black and Brown women more. I don't know why. Some of the things I've read have to do with like trauma.
That's what one of
And
my gynecologists told me.
yeah.
She said that because I had to ask too, because everyone in my family has it. Like I was literally the last person. So
Mhm.
she said there's certain diseases within certain races. So he said it's indicative we're more prone to it because we're Black women, I suppose. He said different cultures or different people have different diseases within that. That's what she
Yeah.
said.
And
So
it made me so angry too, because if it's like, okay, fine, if you're going to ignore Black and brown women, okay, fine. But 80% of all women will have fibroids at some point. And yes, some people can have, like some women can have fibroids and it doesn't bother them at all. But then it depends on where the fibroid is located. It impacts fertility. It impacts if your fibroid is in the wrong if you have a different type of fibroid or it's in the different location, it can cause you the bleeding that we experience. But
uh,
every time I went to the hospital or I was looking, it was kind of like, oh, they're just fibroids. They're just fibroids. Meanwhile, I'm bleeding out. I'm at work. You know,
uh,
when you were talking about when you were telling me before how when your relatives looked at you and you looked sick, that was me too. I was pale. I would go into work, and I'm on camera, I'm on TV. I
right.
looked sick. Like I would say to people, I'm like, I look sick. And I think people around me just trying to be nice, like, oh, you look fine, you look fine. But then I have to be mentally, because it impacts your like your brain, because all the your blood is leaving your
Yeah,
body
yeah,
and it's impacting your organs, it's impacting everything. So when people were like, "Oh, it's just fibroids," I've heard of people dying because of fibroids, right? My dad, when he found out of what was happening to me, he's like, "Oh, you know, we've had like back in Uganda where I was born, he's like, we had relatives die from bleeding." So it's something that I guess that was in my family, but I didn't know. And we don't talk about it. And so part of me, when I was talking about it publicly, it was just anger, being told it's
yeah,
just fibroids. And I'm like, I am bleeding. I'm not trying to be some kind of delicate flower. I am not a delicate flower. I'm a very strong person and I am bleeding nonstop for 52 days. And it's not that cute bleeding you see on the commercial and someone is still, you know, trapezing through the fields and rolling in the grass like, oh, life is so good. This is like, I am in pain. I can barely walk. I can't function. And so all I could do for myself, all the energy had I had to reserve it for work because I have
yeah.
a demanding job and for home. So I didn't go anywhere. And also, I don't want to go anywhere and have an accident. A few years ago, I was in my friend's bridal shower, and guess what happened? Bled through the bridesmaid dress, and I had to leave the party early, right? And this
Yeah.
has been going on for a very, very long time. And then I found out once I had access to my records from my because I was trying to figure out what was going on. I realized that the first time that I was diagnosed with fibroids was way back in 2016. And my doctor at the time, because I didn't feel well back then, and my
Mm.
stomach wasn't big as it was by the time I had surgery. Because yeah, I looked as if I was 6, 7 months pregnant.
I will
My
tell you something. I
Mhm.
was my gynecologist told me I looked like I was having triplets. That's how big it was. It wasn't one kid. It was so I'm not sure. I actually when I went into the had my surgery and I came out, I lost 30 pounds. I
Wow.
lost so I went in at a certain weight and literally I came out as bones.
Wow. I'm
Yeah,
so sorry.
I wish I don't show many people the pictures because I look bad. Like I still have it on my phone. Like I have to keep a document of this because I looked unwell. And my
Mhm.
stomach was when I sat, it's like I always misjudge where how big it was because I was bumping into things. Like so if
Mhm.
I sat, I'd like knock over things because I never knew my stomach was that big. I couldn't real but my stomach was that big.
Yeah.
It was that big.
Yeah.
So for me now, I'm like small. I was never a small person. I'm
Mhm.
always like a curvaceous person. I got some whatever. Now everyone's like, you're skinny. I'm like, that those words don't Michelle and skinny don't
Right.
but it's 30 pounds.
30 pounds of like tumor. It's a
Yeah.
tumor, right? And
Yeah.
it's like it's feeding off your body and it's
Yeah.
growing. And every time you bleed, it gets bigger and stronger. So for me, I've always been I've been a slim person most of my life, except when I had my pregnancies and I had back-to-back C-sections. And when I had my daughter, in 2013, I like my stomach wouldn't go down and I flagged it to
Oh,
my doctor at the time and she was just kind of like, "Oh, you're a mom, you just need to lose 5 pounds." So I'm like, "But I feel weird. I feel off." And so it's been that long. And so even though they took the fibroids out, and you're right, it does feel very hard.
yeah.
Even though my fibroids out, my stomach is still kind of stuck in how it was. It shrank a little bit because I've been moving out, like I've been working out practically like since I was cleared after my surgery. I've been working out every day just because I'm still in pain. And that's the other thing about,
Yeah.
you deal with the fibroids, you have, because like post 2020, like if, like it's so great that you were able to get the surgery for so long. I should have had the surgery, I mean, 2016 is when they first found them. And then I didn't really know about them until 2022. So I'd had them for 6 years.
Okay.
And then COVID, for whatever reason, changed. We know it changes people's bodies.
Yeah.
It must have just triggered something in it to make it even worse. Because one of the fibroids, I had several fibroids, and the one that my surgeon was like, it was 10 centimeters for one. And they were pushing on my spine, they were pushing on my bladder, on my colon, everything. And so once they went in, initially it was only supposed to be laparoscopic, right? Like it just easy, not easy because every surgery has some kind of risk,
Yeah.
but it was supposed to be laparoscopic, so the recovery is different. And then as I'm walking to the OR, the nurse looks at my stomach and she goes, "They're going to have to cut you open." And
Uh,
that was the first time that I heard anybody say they're going to have to cut you open. And I was like, "What?" And then I wake up and they have to cut me open, right? So there was also that kind of like, because I didn't have time to make peace with that piece of it, that part of it.
yeah, yeah.
And then you're supposed to go away and get better, right? Sick leave. And I'm lucky again to have insurance, but the my work 6 to 8 weeks you're supposed to be back, and then there's a third party insurance, and they're saying, well, it says 6 to 8 weeks, I guess, on Google, and you're supposed to be better in 6 to 8 weeks. My doctor's saying no, she's not well, but then it's like go back to work, and I'm not well. There's
Wow.
also that piece. And again, I have health insurance. There are a lot of other people who don't have that part. And it seems as if every kind of gynecological situation for women, 6 to 8 weeks, you're fine, because that's what I was told after having kids, right? And it's the same thing with the surgery. And that's the other piece because it's like you're not allowed to heal. You're not given the time to heal. So for the past 6 months I've been working, I've been in excruciating pain. So now I have to figure out, okay, I need physio. How am I going to find time to get better? In short, when it comes to women's health, it's just not taken seriously. And I'm glad that more people are talking about it. Like Halle Berry is being very vocal about women going through perimenopause and menopause. We have a lot of books from Jen Gunter about, the women's body, the vagina Bible. She also talked about, there's another book that she has on menopause and periods called Blood. And I think that's what the book is called. And then Karen Tang has a book called It's Not Just Hysteria because it's like it feels like at this big age that I have, that if I don't talk about this publicly, I'm accepting it. I'm saying it's okay when it's not okay. When I wrote my article for TVO, I had so many people DM me and say, this happened to me. This happened to my mother. There's one story a woman shared with me. Her mom waited for 12 years for surgery.
Holy crap.
They just did not take it seriously. They were just like, it's just bleeding. And it was fibroids just destroying her body, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, and there's a loss too, because it's like there's no space for us to talk about these things, right? And it's just, anyway, for me, it's just the confluence of everything that's happening right now. And I wish more people would talk about these backlogs for surgery. There are women who are leaving Canada, who are leaving Ontario to go abroad to have surgery for endometriosis, to
Yes.
have surgery for fibroids. A friend of mine has been waiting for a year just to speak to a gynecologist. How can that be?
I'm I have listening to you and listening to well, definitely your story, because I actually did follow it on Twitter. Um it, I guess I'm really lucky though. I will say that because my gynecologist told me everything. I'm not gonna lie. She said, Michelle, this is how we're gonna cut you, because I'm cut because it was so big, right? So you gotta remember it was ginormous. It was 30 pounders. So it was a child, children. So
Yeah.
I am cut. I had 40 staples on my stomach. So the thing is with me, I was thrust into menopause because of the surgery, because they had to get rid of everything, right?
Hmm.
Like for me, she asked me, do you want to keep your ovaries? You may get ovarian cancer. I'm like, whatever. So I'm like, you know what? Just do what you got to do,
Hmm.
whatever. Like I'm okay with that. Like I mean, like I had to be at peace with that because I never had kids before. But
Hmm.
I have a nephew, and I cherish him dearly. Like he's like my child. So I'm like, I said, I'm okay. I mean, I'm fine. I'm just gonna still live my life. What I'm getting from you though, actually, this is what I want to get to, because you said you're still feeling pain. And I'm
Hmm.
like, for me, I mean, it took me 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, like, okay, true, I don't have health insurance or whatever, but I did take the time off. I'm like, I have no choice. I can't go to work. And
Hmm.
I went to work, went back to work after I think 10 weeks, I think it was 10 weeks or so, but I work from home and it's
Hmm.
just like a little part-time job. It's anything major. But right now I feel better. I have my energy. Like, so when I hear your story and Claire, because Claire is the same thing,
Hmm.
she said she's still getting heavy periods. I'm like, what is going on? Are you
Yeah.
serious? This is
I think
insane.
I think it's different for everybody. Again, that's the thing. Everybody, because you were able to get surgery, it seems very fast because it was before 2020. So I'm guessing
No,
like
no, it was last year.
it was last year you were able to get. So where in Toronto you were able to get surgery? For some reason, I thought this was 2019. Where did I get
No,
2019 from?
I got no, my everything happened. This okay, so we found out. I found out what happened July 2023.
Hmm.
So I had my surgery November 2023, 2023.
I
So
don't understand how so then it must be a doctor thing. It
I
has to be a doctor
I
thing.
think okay, so the thing is, I don't know what you look like now. Like I don't know what your stomach but I look like there was something wrong with me. Like if you saw me on the street, you'd be like, there is clearly something wrong with this person. Like because my frame
Mhm.
was like my arms were like nothing. They were like two little sticks. And then I had just ginormous
The big
body.
head.
So they probably thought they didn't, and plus they didn't know what the mass was. There was this
Right.
mysterious mass in my body, right? When I talked to my gynecologist, she said it was the fibroid, but because I had an MRI, they're like, because it was up to my
I
breast.
didn't have an MRI.
Oh, you didn't?
No, they didn't give me one.
CT scan? Did you get a CT scan?
Nope.
No CT scan?
No CT scan.
So then how did, okay.
So
I,
in February of 2020, February of 2023, I had a vaginal ultrasound,
yeah,
and that picks up nothing. Okay, it picks up um
it didn't pick up anything for
it's
me
not the
either.
same as an MRI or CT scan because MRIs show everything. And so when I had my surgery, because at first they were like, "Oh, you have 3 to 4 fibroids." And when I had my surgery, I had more than that.
Uh,
And
mm,
within the year, because I was bleeding so much within that year, the things got bigger and bigger.
of course.
And I think part of the problem is they look at people, and even for me, people would look at me and think that I was fine, but I wasn't fine. And if I'm going to the ER every few weeks, it just seems so counterintuitive, especially when you're having a healthcare system that needs the resources. So you're wasting resources on me practically
Mhm.
every other month. And I remember being at I ended up I was at Women's College Hospital getting an internal exam, and the clot just kept, sorry, not to be TMI, it just kept coming out. And then
Oh,
the
I
person
know.
at Women's College Hospital tells me to walk to emergency at Mount Sinai. Um, and
Wow.
then a few months later, I'm in the ER again at St. Mike's, and they say to me, I've never seen anybody bleed like this before.
Wow.
And then 2 seconds later, then they turn around and say, we can't do anything else for you because you already have a gynecologist. So I don't know what's going on within the system itself, because if you're going, one moment you're going to say, I've never seen anyone bleed like this, to then say, I can't do anything for you. And that time, that's when I also tweeted my blood pressure. I came in with really bad high blood pressure. And then when they got the bleeding under control because they gave me tranexamic acid, um, they discharged me even though my blood pressure was still high. And then my original gynecologist, I told him, I go, my blood pressure is high. He's like, I've never heard a correlation between fibroids and blood pressure. So maybe my doctor just didn't think my situation was urgent enough for him. But eventually, I got to the point where I said to him, if you're not going to give me surgery, help me find a surgeon.
Mm.
And eventually he did, but by then I already found one. So I just decided I'm not going to wait another 6 months like this. I'm going to see what I can do. I would actually pick up the phone and call different gynecology offices and say, this is what's happening to me.
Yeah.
Can you help me? There was a surgeon, to her credit, in Barry, who was ready to do my surgery. It was just, for me, it was just a matter of logistics. Like, my family's in Scarborough, I've got small kids.
Mhm.
How do I get there? How do I,
Yeah.
but she was, and then, sorry, I'm still getting over my cold. And then another surgeon was accepting patients based on how big the fibroids were. And when I told her how big mine were, she was like ready to to offer me a date. So maybe I just I got the wrong surgeon who just, you
Well,
know,
she's a lifesaver. I call her that. Like honestly, like I feel like I want you to go to her because they gave me this her when I went to the ER. It was on a rapid gynecology list. So I just went to her and luckily she was everything was really good. I can't
I'm
believe
glad. That's how it should be.
yeah,
That's how it should be. But I've heard so many stories of the opposite, right? That's how it should be. And I'm really glad that you got the care that you needed, because that's what everyone should have.
and I
And
didn't
I
even
think,
have insurance. Like I do
yeah.
the things, everything was out of pocket, and I don't care. Like I would pay whatever I had to be quite honest, because I'm with you. The life with fibroids, like the bleeding,
Mhm.
I didn't leave my house for years.
Mhm.
That's how bad it was.
Same. Same, and people don't understand, right?
No,
Because
I never left. I
everything,
didn't. I couldn't. I could like when I went on vacation. I went on my last vacation was in 2018,
yeah,
and I always carry pads with me, even though I'm not on my period. But the thing is, I always get my period when I'm away. So I
yeah.
carry like a crap load of pads in my suitcase. So they're probably thinking, is she gonna like hemorrhage? Like, why does she have so much? But I always so
But
now,
that's exactly what's happening. You are hemorrhaging. And
yeah.
like it would scare my kids because it's like that I would have, especially night, because I couldn't really sleep because I was always changing my pad. They're like, "Oh my God, mommy, are you okay?"
Oh,
And that's having those conversations with them was always hard. But there's a lack of resources when people are waiting just to get a year to get surgery. And also just knowledge, like why aren't we talking more about fibroids? Why don't we know what causes them?
thank you.
Why don't we have solutions that go beyond you taking medication that one of the medications that was prescribed to me treats prostate cancer,
Oh my God.
and it was given to treat my fibroids. I'm like, but it treats what? Like, why am I taking,
Wow.
like it's just like my physiology is so different from a man's, and you're giving me a pill that's supposed to help with his like how are these things like
No,
it's
I
just
feel for you. Like I don't I
yeah.
they did you wrong. I'm not just hearing all this, it's actually so scary. Like I mean, I was scared in my situation, but your situation it was just so much more. Like I think it's just misdiagnosis, mistreatment, miss not listening. That's what I'm hearing. Like no one was listening to you. Like
No,
you
no
took
one.
no one took
Until
your
my
feelings.
final doctor, my surgeon, the one that ended up doing the surgery, um, like he examined me and he actually said to me, he's like, has anyone else told you that you have adenomyosis? And I go, adeno what? So adenomyosis is similar to endometriosis. And I was like, no one's ever told me that. He's like, well, you have that. After he did like some internal exams. So it's like even like the imaging, um, it just blows my mind that all those times I went to the ER, no imaging was done for me.
Yeah.
And I honestly did, like in my article, I wrote about how I thought I was going to die. I'm not kidding, Michelle. I thought I was going to die because I would bleed so much, and the things that were coming out of my body, I'm like, this is not normal. And the anemia, my hemoglobin was low. Everything was low.
How low did it go? Because mine was 76. What was yours go down to?
I can't remember, but it was low.
Okay.
One of them was in the single digit. Was it my ferritin?
Wow.
One of them was in the single digit. It was low. I think mine was at one point maybe 110. Again, it's like those months felt so the level of adrenaline in my body and the level of stress, because I didn't even know those numbers, right? So every time I would go in, it was only until this surgeon was like, wait a minute, like your numbers are really bad. And my family doctor, I finally got a new family doctor, and she was also helping. She was really helpful. She would call different surgeons. She would fax, how they fax off like the referrals. She would actually pick up the phone and call them and say, and she would say, I have a patient and she's in a real bad way. Because I was also wasting her time. I was
Mm.
always in the office. If I wasn't at my family doctor, I was in the ER or I was at home. Those were the three places that I would, go to. The amount of times I almost fainted because I was so lightheaded all the time. Um, and I look back at those times, like last year when all before my surgery, I was hosting 4 shows and
I knew
I was
that.
working 13, 14-hour days. And I look back at myself and I say, I can't believe that I did all that. And I think it just shows how women kind of, you just get on with it. And there are costs to getting on with it because sure, I got all my work done, but now my health, the ripple effects, I'm
Mm.
still in pain at a time when I should be, like, okay, everything was worth it. I'm still in pain because it's just like this prolonged recovery. because I got to go back to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. And who has time to heal? And, that there's a cost to it. Right. And so I'm just grateful that I was able to have surgery. I can't even fathom waiting until January of 2025 for my original surgery
Yeah.
that was scheduled in January 2025. And I hope more women speak up about it. So I appreciate you asking me to talk about it, because this is not something we should just be whispering. This has a real impact on the quality of our lives
Yeah.
and the quality of our health and long-term health. And if we don't speak up about it, it's just going to continue to happen. And I don't want that to happen to my daughter. I don't want it to happen to younger girls that are coming up, my nieces. So I think we need to be as loud about that. And also, I think like your story, it's great to hear the good story, like the good news story, because there are a lot of surgeons who want the best for us, but their resources and their time is very, very limited. And so, I don't think anyone wants to turn some away from surgery, but I also am not naive to think that sometimes racism isn't at play, sometimes misogyny isn't at play. It's
Yeah.
just fibroids, after
So
all.
happy.
So,
That's so happy. That's why I'm so happy I have a woman, a female gynecologist,
yeah.
to be quite honest. Like, she was so
Yeah.
gentle with me, even when I met her, like, because I was terrified. I was like
Mhm.
really terrified of everything. And she was just so gentle and just kind of told me this. And she was like, there's no judgments and whatever. Cause I mean, like, I haven't seen a doctor for so long. And so that was my bad. Right. So
Yeah.
when she had to do all the testing and everything, and I said, please don't judge me. She's like, why would I judge you? I have no judgment. I'm here to help you, because you clearly need help. She was a lifesaver. I mean, I will definitely give you her number if you want it. I mean,
Thank
I don't know if she's accepted. I have no idea. After that conversation, our show came to an end. I was grateful that I had the chance to listen to Nam speak about her situation firsthand. I thanked her for her time and thanked her for being on the show. I want to thank you for being on the show because I didn't even go into the question. We just talked, and
you.
that's probably the best thing because there's women out there who are in the same situation. Because every time I leave the house, I talk about it, and
Mhm.
someone says, "Well, yeah, I know someone has fibroids, and they're going through the same thing."
Mhm.
So it's very popular, or not popular, but it's widespread, right? So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing your story with me and with the audience. So
And thank you for the opportunity to talk about it and inviting me onto your podcast. I appreciate it.
no problem. Been great. I also want to thank you for listening to the show. My hope for this episode is that if anyone out there has symptoms similar to what Nam and I describe, please talk to your doctor, go to a walk-in clinic, or talk to a friend or family. And hopefully you wouldn't have to go through what we went through. Take care of yourselves. Bye. Thanks for joining me for the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. Just a reminder, you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions or would like to provide feedback, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at michelle@wordsofmichelle.com. You can also email me if you have inquiries regarding sponsoring the show. Thanks for listening. Until next time, bye.